I'm your host, Gary Gross, and every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. we talk about nonprofits, foundations, and charity organizations with those people that interact with them the most. And my guest today is Angela McKellar. How are you?
Doing very well, Gary. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome, and we're glad you're here. And Angela, not only a dear friend, but also is a chef and host of an online cooking show called Kickback and Kook. It's supposed to be Cook, I suppose, but we'll say Kook. And you have a very interesting background besides being married to a buddy of mine. You have been doing this cooking since you were just a wee tot. Why don't you tell us about this?
I began cooking when I was 3 years old. My great-grandmother, who survived the Depression era, she taught me everything that she knew. And so I started cooking around the age of 3. First thing was the biscuits that we were making. She would kind of throw out the all-purpose flour, and I thought it was fairy dust.
So you played it, just like any normal child.
It was Play-Doh, yes. And so it just kind of developed from there.
And you had this love affair with cooking right away, and you started following her footsteps around.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started getting involved in making your own concoctions like all children do.
And that was one of the things that was so great about her. She could take anything out of the pantry and turn nothing into something, and she instilled that in me. That the kitchen is a place to be creative and a way to escape the stress of the outside world. So that's what I've been using it for we won't say how many years.
Yes, we will. We're going to tell you exactly how many years. But it's funny because you actually started doing dinner parties. This is amazing to me. You actually started doing dinner parties when most people don't even know how to actually set a plate. So when you were just a young adolescent of 12, you started doing these dinner parties. Now, why did you start doing them, and how did you even know how to do them?
Because I was very prissy and I liked to entertain.
You said that, I did.
I wanted to feel important and I wanted to feel like I was one of the adults. And so my mother decided that she would invite several of her friends over and I would cook dinner for all of them. And even though you could throw the muffins at the wall and I think put a hole in the drywall, everyone said that it was amazing.
So what were some of the first recipes you ever made?
Oh goodness. The first things that I ever made
were really... still some people that are ill from that? That's what I want to know.
Not anymore.
Those that are still living?
Yes.
Okay.
The first thing that I cooked were the easy things. Scrambled eggs, any kind of breakfast food, that sort of thing. And by the time I was 14 or 15, I graduated to where I was making Thanksgiving dinners with the turkey and the casseroles and the rolls and all of that sort of thing. And when I was 16, I had a boyfriend break up with me because I was too domestic. He came over and I had made a devil.
He'll learn.
He'll learn.
It's still
One day
haunting
he'll regret that.
It's still, if you're listening right now, you've messed up.
But he came over and I'd made this devil's food cake that had the seafoam icing on it, and it had to be made in a double boiler, and it was very fancy. And he said he didn't want to end up with somebody that would just want to cook all day.
He'll learn.
So.
And there's a lot of things we want to discuss today, and a lot of the things we're going to discuss as we go through this is also one of the facts that you devote so much of your time and energy to charitable organizations, and we're going to get into that. But before we do, let's talk about, you actually then took a lot of those learning experiences and continued cooking, and you even had an opportunity to be one of the very first reality TV stars on a cooking show. Tell us about that.
It was very interesting. I went through several different interviews and they thought I was really quirky and they liked my personality, and it was the first season of Hell's Kitchen that was hosted on the Fox network, and they flew me out to LA for the final interviews. There may have been maybe 20 of us out there. And so,
now, how did they come up with that name? Is there a specific reason why they call it Hell's Kitchen? Because I'm from New York, and in New York, in the city, there's a place called Hell's Kitchen. That's a little neighborhood area.
Well, a lot of people think that Gordon Ramsay is Satan incarnate, and so he runs the kitchen and he doesn't make it very pleasant for everyone.
Okay, so he was the first Iron Chef. Okay.
That's right.
All right, there we go.
So I got out there and I liked some of the people that I met, but I could tell there were a couple of people that I knew they were going to cast because they were very, I guess you could say, controversial and confrontational, and I was afraid. I didn't want to be with people that were going to be mean to me.
You decided it wasn't for you.
I decided it wasn't for me.
Well, I can understand.
But it was a lot of fun. I was really appreciative for the opportunity, and since then, many other opportunities have presented themselves.
And so you've been doing some local teaching?
Local cooking classes at the Cook's Warehouse. Had my first class last weekend, and it went very well.
Congratulations. But
Thank you.
before we get into that, give us an idea where you came up with this kickback cook. Or because I
You
know you,
can't
so
laugh at me.
I know you, so I say kickback kook.
It's very apropos.
So how did you come up with this name?
Actually, what happened was I had, after the whole Hell's Kitchen interview process, I'd had this idea, well, I didn't want to be in reality television, but I knew that I wanted to have a cooking show. And I wasn't sure how I wanted that to materialize, and I had been talking to my husband about it, and just couldn't figure out how to make it work. Well, one morning I got up and I kind of stumbled into his office, and I said, Michael, what do people think about the cooking show? What did they say? Did they like it? And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you know, Kick Back and Cook, that cooking show I'm doing. What did they like about it? And he said, Angela, you don't have a cooking show. I had dreamed about this show called Kick Back and Cook. And when I finally decided to make all of this come to fruition, I said, you know that dream I had, Michael? I think we'll call it Kick Back
We
and
have a
Cook.
name, and we're going to learn a lot more about not only your husband and your desire to work with nonprofits, but your cooking show as well when we come back from this commercial. You're in the Fog on RadioSandySprings.com.